I'm Steve Izan. We're on the road. Today we're in Chestertown. We're about to go over this bridge. Chestertown's on the eastern shore of Maryland. We're going to see some great things today. We're going to see the Sultana, which is a yacht. We're going to see the farmers market. We're going to see some historic things in Chestertown. It's on Maryland's eastern shore, so come on, let's go across the bridge. I'm Steve Izan. We're at the Chestertown Farmers Market and Fair. We're going to see a lot of fun things. We have some produce coming up, some flowers, we have some crafts. It's all here at Chestertown. This fair starts in April. It's every Saturday, and it runs all the way through Christmas. So if you want to do a nice day trip, Chestertown's on the eastern shore. It's only about an hour's drive away from Baltimore. Let's take a look and see what's inside.
I'm Owen McCoy. I am the market manager. The market was started in 1982 with just a few people by Jamie Godion was the name of the lady who started. And I took over 2 or 3 years later, and we've been running it ever since, and it's grown into what we have now.
I'm Heather Collins. You can find us here at the Farmers Market from the weekend before Easter until Christmas Eve. I'm one of about 25 artisans here. You can find, I do hand-painted glassware. We have jewelers, we have beaders, we have photographers, we have people who do prints. Come check us out.
We're with Betty King. We have some very colorful pillows and throws and things. Tell us a little bit about this, please.
Raised in Chestertown, and I just came across a little crocheting business. It's so much fun. My phone number is 410-778-2699. My business is totally different.
Colorful clothes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I hope they come out.
My name is Rob Dye.
We'll stand next to you there. And what's your name?
Rob. I'm his wife, Becky.
Becky, okay.
And he paints with hot tea.
We're with Laura Sanford this morning. We're still at the Chestertown Fair and Farmers Market. Laura, we see some beautiful looking plants here. Tell us a little bit about what you do, how you raise them, where you grow them.
Well, I live in Centerville. Most of my stuff is native, although I do have some non-native things, and I also do organic vegetables.
We're with Sarah. Sarah, tell us a little bit about all this colorful jewelry that we see here.
Right, well, it's a family business, so we all do our part. We do guitar pick, bracelets, earrings, and necklaces. Make bracelets out of them.
We're down on the wharf on the Chester River. Behind me you see a buy boat. A little bit to my left, your right, is what's called a skipjack. And behind us is the Sultana. We're going to be going on the Sultana in just a moment. We're going to interview the president and captain of the Sultana. It's a very interesting story, so please stay with us. We're on board the Sultana. We're here with Drew McMillan. He's president of the Sultana Foundation, if I'm using that term correctly. And first thing our viewers probably want to know is, tell us about the original Sultana.
The original Sultana was a merchant ship. It was built up in Boston in 1768, and it was pretty small. And right after it was built, it was bought by the Royal Navy to enforce the tea taxes. And that's why it's such a special boat, because when the Royal Navy got a hold of it, they kept meticulous records. So between 1768 and 1772, we know everything the boat did every day, the name and birthplace of every person who was on it. And it's a great window, it's a great snapshot on American history in the years leading right up to the Revolution. The other great thing about Sultana as an artifact historically is the British did a survey of her, and they recorded in detail how the boat was built. And it was one of the few times that anyone did a recording of American shipbuilding before the American Revolution. And as a result, the boat that we're standing on is an almost exact replica. Almost everything about it is exactly the same as the original.
Well, that's fascinating. So tell us about the current Sultana and its history, how it got started.
Yeah. The new Sultana was the idea of shipwright John Swain. And back in the mid-90s, he had the idea that it would be a great thing for a small colonial town like Chestertown that was a historic port. This town was founded as a port, to have some vestige of that history on the waterfront. So in other words, to build the type of ship that used to come to Chestertown. And because there were so few examples of that type of ship, Sultana was one of about 7 or 8 boats of the right size that there was any real information about. So that's how it started. It became, really it started rolling in about 1997, and it moved very quickly. It was very well received by the town, and believe it or not, by 1998 we were building, and by 2001 it was launched.
And when you say built, shipwrights or local citizens?
The boat was built by 4 professional shipwrights and then about a crew of maybe 50 volunteers, of which maybe 10 would be working on the boat at any one time. And it was over about 350,000 man-hours to build the boat, a large majority of which were volunteers. That's the only way you could afford something like this, really, because there's just so much work to it.
I understand you have some great educational programs to help students and people that want to know more about just the Chesapeake and the Sultana.
Yeah, even before we started building Sultana, we knew that it couldn't just sit at the dock in Chestertown. There has to be a purpose for it, and the purpose for this boat from the inception was education. You think of the Eastern Shore as being riddled with waterways, and there really is so much water around here, but you would be shocked the percentage of students in elementary school on the Eastern Shore who've never been out under the Chesapeake Bay. And that's why this boat exists. This boat exists to take 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, primarily from the Eastern Shore, out for educational programs on the Chesapeake Bay. And she takes about 5,000 students out each year.
In terms of if someone wants to contact you about more information on the educational program, or actually to visit the Sultana website, emails, what's the best way to contact us?
Probably the best way to learn more about what we do is our website, which is sultanaprojects.org, or just call our phone number 410-778-5954. We always get questions from the public, is there a way that I can get on board? I'm not a 5th grader. And we do public sales on the weekends, and there are a lot of opportunities for just the general public to get on and go sailing.
One more thought before we leave and ask you for any last thoughts. Is Sultana here all summer, or does she visit other ports?
She spends about 1/3 of her time in Chestertown, and then she visits almost every port she can get into in Maryland. So she goes to Annapolis, Baltimore, St. Michael's, Oxford, Cambridge, St. Mary's, we go to DC, we go down to Virginia, so we're traveling much of our season.
Drew, we have a couple of interesting boats behind us. What I think is called a bi-boat and a skipjack. What can you share with us about those 2 boats?
Well, we're on Chestertown's Cannon Street Pier, which is a real center for wooden boats that do education. In addition to Sultana, you have right now 2 beautiful historic boats owned by Echoville Outdoor School, the skipjack Ellsworth, which is a 1901 boat, and the bi-boat Annie D, which I believe is a 1950s boat. And both of those are used to take kids out and teach them about the bay, teach them about the Chester River.
Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term bi-boat, can you tell us a little bit about what a bi-boat did?
You know, before the advent of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, if you were on the Eastern Shore, a lot of the transportation was done by water. So a bi-boat is really like an 18-wheeler of water. The term bi-boat comes specifically from when that type of boat used to go out to the skipjacks and buy the oysters off the skipjacks and bring them back into port, and that way the skipjacks could return to oystering. They didn't have to come to port every time they filled up. So that's one of the reasons why they're called a bi-boat.
And I know that there aren't many skipjacks and bi-boats left.
No, there's actually a really active fleet of bi-boats. It's called the Chesapeake Bay Bi-Boat Association, and they are now private recreational boats, but they are the historic artifacts. So that's how those are being preserved. And there used to be hundreds and hundreds of working skipjacks, and now we're probably, in terms of working skipjacks, the number is very small, probably under 10. And there are maybe 20 or 30 in total left in the Chesapeake Bay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the quarterdeck.
Watch it, Seth.
Right, okay.
So one of the neat things about Sultana is that the historic boat was steered not with a steering wheel, which is what most people think of when you think of steering boat.
Right.
It was steered with a tiller. Just a 7-foot long lever, basically.
Okay.
And it's great when you have kids on the boat because I can put 5 or 6 kids on this tiller and they can steer the boat. Here, just move it like that.
Okay.
It controls a 16-foot tall, 3,200 pound rudder that steers the boat.
That's got some heft. I can
It
see
is-
why
it
it would
is a
take
solid piece of
five
wood.
kids to do
It is a
this.
solid piece of wood. And when you're going, we're stationary now. Imagine when the boat's going 6 or 7 or 8 miles an hour. That's why you have this relieving tackle right here, because you can only do it with some sort of mechanical advantage to move it.
Yeah,
it's tough.
sure, because you've got all the water pressure against
Yes,
the
yeah,
rudder.
absolutely. And that's how the original, it's amazing, when the original Sultana crossed the Atlantic, which it did at least on 3 occasions that we know of, they would have to have someone on this tiller, not the same person, but someone would have to be manning the tiller, and sometimes those trips took 2.5 months.
So 24 hours a
24
day,
hours a day.
someone would be
back here. They'd probably do it in shifts of 4 hours.
Right.
The original boat had a crew of 25. So imagine this is a 53-foot long hull, which is the same size as a yellow school bus. So imagine 25 people living in a yellow school bus for 2.5 months, and that sort of gives you a sense of what we're talking about here.
So Drew, tell us about this. It's a cannon, a gun?
It's a half-pound swivel gun.
Swivel gun.
Sultana was a tax enforcement vessel, believe it or not, and this is one of the ways that she was able to actually enforce taxes. She had 8 of these guns. They're more anti-personnel weapons than ship-destroying guns. They would shoot shot, like a shotgun.
Okay.
These are actually reproductions that were cast from an actual 1768 Royal Navy gun that was brought up out of the Savannah River in Georgia. And they are fully functional replicas in every way. We fire them pretty much on every program with the kids.
Fire these with the kids?
Almost every day we fire these.
All right, so here we go, back forward. Tell us a little bit about the bow of the boat and some of the things that we see up there behind us.
It's an interesting bow for us. The original Sultana didn't have a motor on it, obviously, because there were no motors around. We do have a motor because the kids have to get back and get on the bus. And the bow of Sultana was never meant to go into the waves. It was going with the waves because the wind was pushing it. So one of the interesting things about the bow of the boat is it's so bluff that if we ever actually have to try to go against the waves and against the wind, the whole deck becomes like an enormous water park of spray coming over the front, which if it happens in the summer, the kids love. If it happens in April or November, it's not quite as much fun.
You say bluff, you mean it's like a flat front as opposed to more of a pointed front?
It's like a watermelon. Imagine the shape of a watermelon.
Okay.
And that's because when Sultana was built, she was a merchant ship, and the goal was to get as much cargo in her hull as you could, not necessarily to go super duper fast. So she is built voluminously. She is a lot of space inside for her length.
Drew, thank you so much for your time on board the Sultana, and we look forward to a cruise later this spring.
Thank you. You're welcome back anytime to go sailing, as is anyone who's watching this. You should come sailing too.
They certainly should. It's been great talking with you. Any last thoughts before we go to break?
I wish it was like this every day in Chestertown. I wish it was sunny and breezy and warm
It's
like
not
this.
like this every day?
It's like this a lot, but this is pretty nice.
This is pretty nice. So that's our interview with Drew McMillan on the Sultana.